Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is episode 14, The Bray Road Beast.
Today we're doing a deep dive into some really unsettling accounts all surrounding the Beast of Bray Road.
Right, in Walworth County, Wisconsin. These stories, they really blew up back in the early 1990s.
They did, and it's fascinating how they still grip people's imagination today.
Absolutely. So we've gathered quite a bit of material here. Local news reports from the time, witness interviews compiled by Linda Godfrey, who really broke the story.
And even some notes from John Frederickson. He was the county's humane officer back then.
Yeah, which is interesting in itself. Our goal, really, is to unpack what these sources tell us about this whole enduring mystery.
Okay, so Bray Road itself. It's important to picture it, maybe. It's not some, gothic, spooky lane.
No, not at all.
It's really just a pretty standard rural road. You've got farmland mostly, some patches of woods.
Right, pretty ordinary.
Exactly, and I think that's part of what makes these stories feel so unsettling. The idea that something truly bizarre could happen in such an unremarkable setting.
Yeah, that contrast is key.
Yeah.
And, when these stories first started making the rounds, what was the reaction? Mostly skepticism, right?
Oh, definitely. Laughter, even. I mean, a werewolf in Wisconsin.
Sounds pretty out there.
It does. But what the sources show, especially Godfrey's work, is that the sheer number of reports and the consistency between them, that started to chip away at the disbelief for a lot of people.
And Linda Godfrey, she was a local newspaper reporter. Her articles in, December 91.
Yeah, that's when it really hit the public consciousness.
Okay.
And sure, there was ridicule at first, of course there was. But she kept investigating.
Right.
And what came out was this picture painted by lots of different people, seemingly unconnected people.
So not just one person seeing something weird.
No, it was more like a pattern emerging.
And adding to that pattern, you mentioned John Frederickson, the humane officer.
Right.
He apparently kept what he actually called his werewolf file. Now, just stop and think about that.
Yeah.
A county official dealing with animal control, pests, that sort of thing, felt these reports needed their own specific file. That gives it a certain weight, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's just he wasn't just laughing it off. He saw something worth, at the very least, documenting seriously.
It takes it beyond just local gossip or folklore,
Exactly. When someone in that position starts taking notes, it changes the conversation. It means maybe there's something concrete behind the stories, or at least enough concern to warrant official attention.
And looking at Godfrey's interviews, the news reports, the variety of witness is really striking.
Yeah, that always stood out to me, too.
It wasn't just one demographic. You had older people, teenagers,
men, women,
people from different jobs, different backgrounds.
blue collar, white collar, yeah.
So what does that diversity tell us? It wasn't just like a shared delusion within one small group.
Well, it makes it much harder to dismiss, doesn't it? If it was just, say, kids telling stories, okay. But when you have this wide range of people independently reporting very similar things, you have to ask, what were they all seeing or reacting to?
Was it something real? Or maybe some kind of shared cultural thing bubbling up?
Or just a very strange coincidence, but it definitely makes you lean towards something genuinely unusual happening out there.
Okay, so let's get into what they were actually seeing. What did these different witnesses describe in those early reports? What are the key features?
Well, the descriptions do have some variations, exact height and stuff. But the core elements, pretty consistent and frankly pretty creepy.
Like what?
The bipedal stance is number one, walking upright on two legs.
Right, not like a normal dog or wolf.
Exactly. That's the immediate giveaway. And then the head, almost always described as canine, like a wolf's head or maybe a German shepherd's.
So a human-like posture, but an animal head.
Pretty much. And the size, often reported as very large, 6, 7, maybe even 8 feet tall.
Wow. Much bigger than any wolf.
Oh, yeah. Way bigger. Covered in hair, that's another common thing. And humanoid hands, but with claws. Big claws.
Claws, okay.
And some of the really scary accounts mention fangs and glowing eyes. Often red eyes, especially seen at night.
Red eyes. That definitely pushes it into nightmare territory.
It really does. Taps into those primal fears,
And these encounters, they weren't always just seeing it from afar, were they? Some were pretty intense.
No, not at all passive. Some reports detail the creature actually engaging with people, like Doris Gibson's story from 91.
What happened there?
She reported this thing lunging right at her car, and apparently afterwards they found deep scratches, like claw marks, on the trunk.
Whoa. Okay, so that's direct physical evidence of something aggressive.
Exactly. That's not just seeing a shadow. That's an attack, basically. It elevates the fear factor massively.
I can only imagine. That's terrifying.
And then you have other accounts, like Lori Andre saw it kneeling beside the road, looked like it was eating roadkill.
So sometimes aggressive, sometimes just
There.
scavenging.
Yeah, the sort of dual nature, threatening one minute, just animalistic the next. But either way, the impact on the witnesses was profound.
How so?
Linda Godfrey wrote about how, even years later, people would get visibly upset talking about it, shaking, sometimes even crying.
Really?
Yeah, that tells you something about the sheer terror these encounters induced. It wasn't just a quick, oh, that was weird. It stuck with them deeply.
Okay, so beyond the physical descriptions and these scary run-ins, some accounts get even stranger, right? Hinting at maybe supernatural stuff.
Yeah, this is where the whole thing gets really dark and honestly fascinating. There's one account that stands out from way earlier, 1936.
1936, so decades before the main wave of sightings.
Exactly. It was told to Linda Godfrey by a newspaper editor. His father, Mark Shackleman, was a night watchman near Bray Road at a place called St. Coletta Institute.
Okay, a night watchman. What did he see?
Shackleman saw this large, canine-headed creature digging on top of what he thought was an old Native American burial mound on the grounds.
Digging on a burial mound. That's creepy.
Right. He scared it off. But then, the next night, he saw it again.
Right.
This time, the story goes, the creature stood up, turned to face him, and seemed to speak, or at least utter a word.
It spoke. What did it say?
According to the account relayed to Godfrey, the word was Gadara.
Gadara. Gadara.
Yeah, Gadara.
Okay, that sounds significant. What does that mean?
Well, as the sources point out, Gadara is a place mentioned in the New Testament. It's the region where Jesus is said to have cast demons out of possessed men into a herd of pigs.
Oh, right. So a direct link to demons?
Exactly. And that connection, hearing that story, apparently led some of the later witnesses, including Lori Andre, to seriously consider that the Beast of Bray Road might actually be demonic.
So for them, it wasn't just an unknown animal. It was potentially something evil, malevolent.
Precisely. It adds this whole terrifying layer of supernatural dread.
And wasn't there other stuff going on around that time, too? Rumors about cults.
Yeah, that definitely fueled the fire. Around the same period, late 80s, early 90s, there were widespread local rumors about supposed satanic cult activity happening in the woods out in Walworth County.
Okay.
John Fredrickson, the humane officer, even noted investigating reports of animal mutilations that some people thought were linked to these cults.
Wow. So you've got sightings of this terrifying creature and rumors of satanic rituals and animal mutilations all happening around the same time and place.
It creates this really potent, fearful atmosphere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to see how people might connect the dots thinking they were witnessing something truly sinister.
Definitely paints an unsettling picture.
But then Linda Godfrey also talked to some local indigenous people about these sightings.
Right, and they had a different take.
A very different perspective, yeah. According to the sources, their view wasn't about demons or modern cryptids. They suggested these upright canine figures might be ancient? Yeah, like beings from the spirit world, potentially. Things that have existed in that region for centuries, maybe longer, long before Europeans arrived.
So not a new monster, but something old. Part of the land almost, but spiritual.
Kind of, yeah. It completely reframes it, moving away from just a monster to something perhaps tied to older beliefs and the spirit world.
That's a fascinating angle.
It really is. So you've got all these layers, the physical descriptions, the scary encounters, this potential demonic link from the Gadara story and the cult rumors, and then this indigenous perspective of ancient spirits.
Yeah.
It's complex. Linda Godfrey herself eventually proposed what she called the indigenous dogman theory.
Suggesting what, like a undiscovered species?
Sort of, yeah. Maybe some kind of unknown canine, possibly related to wolves, that walks upright and has existed in North America for a long, long time, maybe inspiring some of those indigenous legends.
Okay. And despite all the skepticism back then, the ridicule, these stories didn't just vanish after the early 90s, did they?
No, not entirely. The intense media spotlight definitely faded after a while. But reports of similar creatures, they've continued to pop up now and then in the area, even more recently. The Beast of Bray Road hasn't completely gone away.
So when you pull all this together from the sources, It leaves you with this really weird feeling, doesn't it?
It does.
You've got these consistent descriptions, this terrifying creature seen by all sorts of people.
Credible people, seemingly.
Right, and encounters that genuinely traumatize them.
Hmm.
And these really bizarre elements, the Gadara word, the cult connections, the ancient spirit idea.
It blurs the lines, between folklore, mistaken identity, and maybe something genuinely unknown.
Yeah. It really makes you think about what could possibly be out there, even in seemingly ordinary places like rural Wisconsin. What could make so many different people report such similar, terrifying things?
It's a question that lingers for sure. Makes you look over your shoulder a bit when you're driving down a quiet country road at night.
Definitely something to ponder. What lies just outside the beam of our headlights?